My friend is insane at redstone, so I asked him to make me the most impossible redstone prison he could think of. After a few days, he gave me the prison and said I couldn't possibly beat it. This is what happened. The first thing I noticed when joining the world is that the whole prison was made out of bedrock, meaning we couldn't just break our way out of it. And when turning around, I found a redstone torch but didn't know what it was for. The next thing I noticed is that there was a hole in the roof and a netherite block at the top. I also found a ladder, but I was very confused on how I would use these two items. The next thing that struck my interest was this hole in the bedrock, and although I couldn't see anything from my perspective, I could use F5 to see everything outside of it. And sure enough, right outside of the bedrock hole was a lever and a minecart with a chest. I also tried increasing my FOV just to make sure I didn't miss anything, and that's when I saw a sign with the number 7 on it, so I took a screenshot just in case this number would be useful later on. Now that I knew that there was a lever above, I used the ladder I had gotten to climb up and press it. I immediately heard a noise behind me and 2 sand fell from above the opening. It also looked like the second room was through this opening, so I needed to find a way up. I collected the sand and tried to get out using the materials I had, but it wasn't enough. I needed some other item or block, and I knew the minecart chest probably contained this item, but it was too far out of my reach and I had no clue how to get to it. I tried pressing the lever again, but nothing happened, so I started placing down my redstone torch, hoping I would trigger some redstone, and sure enough, I did. Inside the chest there was 1 piece of sand, and with this, we could now get to the top of the opening. I also tried getting the chest and minecart, but the items were just out of my reach. So I built up using the sand and ladder, and now we were in the second room. When walking in the second room, I noticed a glass ceiling with a bunch of pistons and redstone, but I didn't know what it was for. There were also pieces of redstone dust spaced all across the room on both sides, and at the end, there was a hole in the floor. At the end of the hole, there was redstone on both sides. At first, I thought I might need to use my only item to trigger the redstone, but when looking up, that all changed. You see, there was a hole in the roof, and this hole was directly above the hole in the floor. So if I could somehow get the sand to the hole in the roof, it would fall directly into the hole in the floor, triggering the redstone. And I had a pretty good idea on how to do this. You see, the pistons above me had the ability to move the sand, and the redstone dust below me seemed to be placed right near the pistons above. So I placed my torch to activate the redstone, and when I did this, the piston triggered and moved the sand forward. But I quickly ran into a problem. You see, when placing the redstone torch, it would extend the piston, and when breaking it, it would make the piston come back. But I needed the piston to stay so I could then move the sand even further. I was stuck on this until I realized when placing the redstone torch and removing it really fast, the piston stayed. And after figuring this out, I breezed through the rest of the puzzle. When the piece of sand fell into the hole, it dropped down 6 sand and the door to the next room opened up. So before leaving the room, I collected the sand and the redstone and also checked the room for anything I had missed. And that is when I found another sign, and this one had the number 0 on it. So I screenshotted it and moved on. I still had no clue what these signs were for. Hopefully I wasn't missing anything. When walking into the next room, I immediately noticed the netherite on the walls, but wasn't allowed to break it since it was against the rules. I also noticed 2 holes in the wall. As I got closer, I quickly realized that these holes were used to hide tripwire hooks. And above me were a bunch of dispensers, so I assumed that triggering the tripwire would dispense whatever was inside. I also noticed that there were 4 holes in the floor ahead of the tripwire. So I broke the tripwire hooks to disable the trap and got a closer look at the holes. The first hole had a dispenser in it, but it was impossible to reach due to a barrier block on top of it. And the 3 other holes were all the same. They looked identical to the hole in the second room. I also noticed a door high up in the air, but I had no clue how to get to it. But what I did know is that I needed to trigger the redstone in those holes, and I had the exact amount of sand to do it. So I placed the sand in the 3 holes, and after doing so, a potion shot out of the dispenser going through the barrier block. I honestly didn't even know that was possible. The potion was fire resistance, and at first this confused me, but then a thought crossed my mind. See, there were a ton of dispensers above me, and by using the tripwire, it would most likely trigger what was inside, and I was pretty sure that item was going to be lava. You see, if it was lava, I could use the fire resistance potion to swim up to the opening, but it was all still a gamble. The tripwire still could have just been a trap that was meant to kill me, but I took my odds, and sure enough, lava started pouring out of the dispensers. I also noticed another sign and took a screenshot before the lava covered it up. After that, I drank the fire resistance potion and swam up to the opening. In the opening, there was a small drop that led to the next room. So before dropping down, I looked for anything I could use, and the only thing I thought of was to put water in my empty bottle. So after that, I dropped down. In the room, there was a hole that led directly down into the void. inside. I used F5 to try and see anything, and that's when I saw a minecart. With this minecart, I could drop down and right click into it before falling into the void. So I lined myself up for the drop and barely right clicked into it. I then broke both the minecart and rail so I could move around. Below the room, there were 2 pieces of bedrock on both sides of me. I also found another numbered sign. It seemed like there was one in every single room. On one of the blocks, there was a line of redstone. At first, I thought about using the minecart to move around and get to the redstone, but it was too risky. I was pretty clueless. That was until I realized that the length between the 2 blocks was perfect for the tripwire and string. So I placed it down and triggered it, and immediately the netherite block in front of me opened up and started dispensing a cobblestone path. I waited till the path made it to me and then collected the tripwire and string. And after this, I looked around for any more clues, but this time I was even more confused. You see, the only thing the cobblestone path gave me access to was a little hole in the bedrock wall, and it was a 1x1 hole with no opening. This was literally the only thing left in this room for me to try, but this MLG was insane. I needed to place the rail into this opening, then the minecart, and then hop into the minecart, all while in midair. All the odds were against me. I had never done this MLG before, and I couldn't leave the world to practice as it was against the rules. It was all or nothing. All right, here we go. If I die, the hole runs over. 3, 2, 1. Oh gosh. Oh my god. Did I do it? Now you may be wondering what just happened. See, I was confused as well, but apparently after MLGing and shifting out of the minecart, it phased me through the bedrock wall into the next room. I'm honestly not even sure how this was possible. If you have the answer, feel free to leave it in the comments. I would definitely like to know. So now we were in the next room, and the first thing I noticed when walking in was another numbered sign. On the other side of the room, there were 2 arrow blocks on the wall pointing down, and at the end of the room, there was another netherite door just like the one in the second room. But remember, we couldn't just break the netherite due to the rules, so I needed to find a way to open it, and I had found the first clue. You see, there was an empty cauldron in the back of the room, and when placing water inside it, the cauldron moved back into the wall, revealing a chest. So I broke the cauldron, then the chest, and also tried to get the piston, but couldn't reach it. So now I had a chest, but how could this help me open the door? When looking in my inventory, it occurred to me that this wasn't a regular chest. This was a trap chest. So I can now use this chest to power redstone. So I tried placing the chest and redstone torch under both of the arrow blocks, and at first nothing happened. But when placing an item into the trap chest, the door opened up. So before leaving, I looked around for anything I was missing. And after breaking one of the arrow blocks, I found a bed. I decided to break it, and water flowed out of the hole, dropping me the bed. I thought of any way I could use this water, but nothing was coming to mind, so I moved on. And after that, I made my way into the next room. Above this room, there were withers on one side and blazes on the other, but they were trapped in their own separate rooms. When dropping down, I noticed an oddly shaped portal on one side and 5 note blocks placed in the wall. There was also a block of netherite which had a button on it. The only thing that I knew is that I somehow needed to get the blazes down so I could power the portal. But how could I do that? I went through every item in my inventory and thought of all the scenarios I could think of, but nothing was making sense. There was no way I could climb up and break the glass to release the blazes. So I started thinking about the note blocks, and at first I had no clue what to do with them. I thought about breaking them, but I wouldn't be able to reach the note block to pick it up. The only thing that made sense was to right click them, but why would I do that? And then it hit me. There were 5 note blocks, and this might not mean much at first, but think back. How many rooms were there before this one? There were 5. And what was inside every single one of those rooms? A sign with a number on it. This couldn't have been a coincidence. These note blocks were made to enter a code, but how could I enter numbers into a note block? I thought of a few different possibilities, but the one that made the most sense was to individually enter the numbers by punching the note block. So I started by entering the first sign number into the first note block. As I punched a note block, I could hear redstone moving behind it. So I went ahead and entered the rest of the numbers into the note blocks accordingly, but nothing happened. I thought my idea had failed and I was super depressed, but I was forgetting about the button. So I pressed it and heard this sound. And after hearing this sound, the glass dropped and the blazes came out. So I tried to get them to shoot the portal, and at first they shot me, getting me down to 6 hearts. But finally they shot at the portal and lit it. So I hopped in and made my way to the final room. This room was very big, but it didn't have a lot in it. There was a glowstone lamp and a dropper above, and below there was an unlit campfire, and it looked like a redstone block was connected to it. I searched around for any more clues I was missing, and that's when I found a chest and crafting table in the small hole. So I opened the chest, and inside there was a bow and 1 arrow. So now I had 1 bed, 11 redstone, 2 tripwire hooks, 3 string, and a bow. What the heck am I supposed to do with this? I looked around for anything else, but the only thing new I found was a hole in the floor. And I didn't really pay too much attention to the hole at first because I thought it might have just been a building mistake. But then I realized this hole made it so you could line up a shot perfectly with the unlit campfire. And if you didn't already know, you can use a bow to light a campfire if it has flame. But this bow didn't have flame. So I looked around a little more to see if I could find something that could give me fire, but I found nothing. That was until I realized the thing that created fire was already in my inventory. You see, I had forgot that we were now in the nether, so that meant when sleeping in a bed, it would explode and set things on fire. But this was going to be a very risky play. You see, I only had 1 arrow, and to light the campfire with an arrow, you have to hit it in the exact right spot. But I knew this had to be it. So I got in the hole, placed the bed, and destroyed it. And flames went everywhere. I tried to clear some out to get a better look to see if I had a shot, and sure enough, there was a flame in front of the campfire. So I took my shot, and here's what happened. Wait. Did we do it? Oh my god, we actually did it. So now I had successfully triggered the campfire and gotten 3 items from the dropper: the powered rail, minecart, and 1 piece of TNT. I was confused on what I was supposed to do with these items. I tried looking for different crafting recipes, but the only things I could craft were a TNT minecart and redstone block. But I still didn't know what I was supposed to do with these items or how I was going to get out of this room. I even thought about going back through the nether portal, but I was low on hearts and could easily die from the blazes in the other room. The answer had to be here or I was going to lose. When I was playing with the items, I thought about using the redstone block and rail as a power source to light the TNT. But what was I supposed to blow up? And then I realized, with the minecart, I could send it into the overworld and make it blow up the portal. Then I could portal travel and potentially end up outside of the prison if there was another portal in the world. But if there wasn't, it would just light the same overworld portal and send me right back to the same place. And if it did, I would die. So everything was on the line. I lit the TNT minecart, sending it through the portal, and after waiting for a few seconds, I hopped in. And sure enough, I ended up outside the prison with a sign that said, "Congrats, you are now Mumbo Jumbo." But wait, this was a void world, so I escaped a prison just to end up in another one. So out of depression, I just jumped in the void.